Hey everyone, this is David with No Chaser, and for today's topic, I'm going to talk about the wonderful world of cross addiction. And I'm not talking about being addicted to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Jokes, everyone. We're having fun here. But anyway, yes, cross addiction, and this is one of my favorite things to get into. It's one of those things where it's just like, man, does addiction and alcoholism ever end? It's like, no, because once you start getting your stuff together, you could fall into other things. Now, I'm being a little facetious here, but there is always worry about replacing your addiction with something else. And sometimes people say that's a good thing a lot of times. It's like, yes, you replace it with something that's like fulfilling and useful to others and, self-betterment, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about replacing it and continuing the addictive behaviors through something else. So, like, one thing that people could use as like a measurement if you're like, there's a cross addiction to something, and it would be like, well, is this thing destroying your life? Or is it harming your life? And I think that's kind of a low bar. Because here's the thing. Now, let me get some stuff out of the way. When I'm talking about cross addiction, this is not talking about getting addicted to another substance. I think that's obvious. I'm not talking about you go from, doing meth and then you're drinking all the time, or doing, heroin and then just smoking weed addictively, you do it all day, every day. I mean, there's, discussion about maybe that's a preferable harm reduction thing, but we're not going to get into that, not that controversy today. But I'm talking about non sort of substance type things that you would think of normal terms of addiction. I'm talking about getting addicted to things like eating, or just little, what I call the mini addictions, just a lot of caffeine and a lot of nicotine and a lot of a whole bunch of just little more less harmful chemicals. Or one of the big ones that you see a lot is codependency, getting addicted to a person where your self-worth, basically you're now putting your happiness or well-being on the back of another person, which usually ends disastrously all the time. And the reason is that, yes, you think about a lot of these things, there's even positive ones. This happened to me way back in the day, back when I was still in the teens, 19. But I got addicted to just working out. And that would be oh, well, what a great addicted thing to, what a great thing to be addicted to, right? But it wasn't like that. It was a thing I had to do. I was obsessive about it. I still had a lot of the traits that come with it. And, honestly, if you get, addicted to volunteering or something like that, and you stay with that for years and years, then, I don't know, that seems fine to me. What I, in my scenario, what I feel is such a risk of cross addiction is that you start doing something else, something more socially acceptable, or just with way less consequences, or something kind of under the radar of what seems bad, but you do it just as compulsively and obsessively, and the real threat isn't having working out or eating or sex or porn or whatever. It's not so much about that ruining your life the same way that opiates or vodka or crack or beer or whatever. It's not about it ruining your life in that same way. For me, the real risk is that if you're still flexing that addictive muscle, if you're still living in the world of instant gratification, it will, for me, for a lot of other people too, it eventually just leads you back into your drug of choice. The way I feel is that you're doing kind of the same behaviors and the same things, and that can make you kind of coast for a while because maybe your life isn't as chaotic and things aren't going as bad. But just eventually, if you're just kind of going through those same motions, your brain's going to be all right, man, how about we get back to the real thing now? Enough with this, enough with these little appetizers. We're still doing the same stuff. We still have that same mindset. Why don't we just do the real deal? And that's how I felt. And that's what happened with me a lot. And a lot of things, it's not one sort of thing that the cross addiction came up to. It was more of this sort of, again, the behaviors of it were there was times where I know I was just getting addicted to just many sort of pleasures or compulsive things. It would be I would have my day full of like eating in an unhealthy way, sort of like, not just eating in like binge behaviors, drinking caffeine in binge behaviors, smoking cigarettes or something in binge behaviors, doing kind of everything like that. Like watching porn, or just everything was still not just how things might just go through your life, or, some bad habits you stumble upon, guilty pleasures, whatnot. It was still doing it with that real addictive mindset. Like I was still, one of the big things is I'm looking forward to my next blank. And whatever that next thing is, it's the next sort of instant gratification chemical hit of something that ultimately leaves you feeling empty. I was like, I can't wait to get off work, or I can't wait to get up in the morning to like chug the caffeine, get that little mini rush, and then I can't wait to have like the cigarette on break, and not in the normal sense where it's just like a relaxing smoke on break at work, but you're still looking for like the hit of whatever it is, and you still kind of follow that, And I think about like as far as looking for the signs of it, and where you start to get worried is like one thing I think of is that if you want to tell if you're like really not used to something or made a habit of something, but really like dependent on something in a healthy way, try not doing it for a day or a time that you expected to do, and see how much it like bugs you. Not that you get frustrated. I mean, if you had something you're looking forward to and then you don't get to do it, you'll be bummed. Like obviously that's normal. But I mean, think about like really try to gauge like how much anxiety you're actually feeling. Like how much is it not just that you're kind of bummed out you don't get to do it, but you're starting to feel like things are off. Because that was one thing, again, that sort of what you think is a healthy addiction, is that like working out that had happened to me, where like I would, for whatever reason, I couldn't work out, something happened, my car broke down, I couldn't go to the gym or whatever it was, I would just start to become really uncomfortable. Again, not bummed out or disappointed or anything like that, but just really kind of that same sort of mental withdrawal that was going on. And I think about like as far as like looking for signs that you're, and again, you don't even need to think so much of this as like that phrase cross addiction, but just slipping back into that instant gratification, chasing the dragon sort of mode of the addicted mind. And the way I say like, at least what I try to do is I try to be honest with myself in these checks to myself when I'm doing something that, I just feel like maybe I'm doing this too much, or I don't know, this feels like more than just a guilty pleasure sort of thing. Like a really good example that I like to use because I think it highlights the thought process good is naps. Now, I love naps. Who doesn't love naps? I'm pro nap, all that good stuff. But I also have a predilection towards depression, and they can be that whole sort of being tired and gloomy and kind of lounging too much and then just kind of sleeping the day away. I can fall into that easily. So I actually, as weird as it sounds, am hyper vigilant about the naps. So I kind of ask myself, if I like want to take one, I'm in a state of some sort. Like I kind of go, why are we doing this? Are you doing it because you're genuinely tired? I mean, maybe you have stuff to do, but if you're really tired, there's no, like, you don't need to flagellate yourself for that. Like, that's okay. You're a human. Now, though, are we doing this as one of the time travel naps? Like, you feel sad or you feel out of sorts or you just kind of, you're really tired of the world in that emotional, mental way, and you just want to, like, time travel 2 hours into the future and hope you feel differently, which in my experience has never worked. I usually just feel worse when I do that. But like I'm talking about that kind of like sort of a self-interrogation. Interrogation's probably too strong of a word, but just really a reflection on like the purpose of why you're doing something, in that sense of like, is this just like feeding something to distract me from like the bad emotions I'm feeling? And it's not crazy to distract yourself from bad emotions. I mean, I think that's a big part of recovery. If you're feeling in a certain state, go and do something. Go be with other people, or do some hobby, or do some self-betterment activity, or just spend time with friends, family. Like, that's totally fine. You don't have to you don't need to run to a therapist every time you're feeling a certain way. It doesn't always have to be like that crazy hyper-vigilant. But really, if you start seeing like a sort of pattern of something you're doing, like I said, when it comes to sex, or for guys, mainly pornography, or if it's eating, or if it's just, just sleeping a lot, or if it's just any sort of, it could be even some things, again, something that's totally innocuous, seemingly benign, or a good thing, like gaming or watching TV or like fitness, like I said, or even some people have told me before they feel like they're almost getting addicted to recovery, like just going to a lot of meetings, doing like just fully immersing themselves, but not in a way of like striving for betterment and recovery, but in a sort of, there's a little bit of like a desperation background to it. We're not desperate to get better, but I just need to do something and I'm just going to do this. Because like of all those things I've listed, the two bad outcomes that can occur is the one that I mentioned before, where just getting in that sort of addicted behavior can lead you back to what the original monster was. And then kaboom, there goes life is super sucky. Or it can leave you feeling empty, where I know I had done this with a lot of things, where you just go full bore in it and you just do it so much, and then you become tired or exhausted of it, and then you're just kind of really left back at square one. You still have kind of the same feelings, some of the same problems you kind of were in denial of, and you're just there where you're at again. And you can try to like go to a new thing and pursue that, but again, it's all in a sense, and I don't even want to say just everything in moderation, sort of like sloganeering. Like, I mean, it's really the inspection of what your motivation is for developing some sort of pattern, especially if it's a pattern that is connected with pleasure in some sort of way. Again, you know, like this seems, even as I'm saying it now, it's just like, God, this self-analysis can seem so exhausting and probably isn't healthy. And again, I'm not like saying you have to be crazy introspective of everything that you do, but I feel like internally there are little things you feel when you're just like, man, I'm kind of doing this a lot. And especially, I mean, this goes without saying, but especially if it's something where you can see some sort of, even if they're small, like negative things coming from it, you kind of just keep doing it and you're kind of itching to do it. You know, it's really looking again at the motivation and what is like driving you to do that. You know, like I said, going back to the nap thing, what's driving me to do that is I'm just feeling in sort of a bad place and I don't really feel like maybe doing something that would help. And I don't want to just accept where I'm at right now. And I'm just going to go into a softer way of oblivion. Instead of drinking myself into oblivion, I'll just kind of sleep. And, you know, again, when I'm napping, I'm not like drinking and driving or causing problems or becoming suicidal or on the verge of overdose, or I'm not any of those things, but I'm still kind of in that cycle. I'm still setting up that mousetrap for myself of just being in this same sort of like defeating and destructive, even if the destruction isn't so crazy, but just this destructive behavior of being addicted, not dealing with life as it comes or in some sort of way that is healthy, or at least doesn't even have to be satisfying or good, but something towards growth. It's just kind of like, you can think of it as like avoidance, instant gratification, all those things. Like, again, when I think of cross addiction, and again, not just the one of just going to a different substance, but just getting into those patterns of behavior that basically mimic what you were doing before. Again, maybe in a more acceptable way, maybe in a less noisy or destroying stuff sort of way. But I don't know. For me, it always led me back to the devil numero uno. I mean, I would just, if I don't change kind of what I'm doing here and kind of my same thought processes of how I'm trying to make myself feel better, I'm just going to go back to the original thing that I like doing, which is horrible. But I don't know. I hope that makes some sort of sense about like at least what I try to do to just be aware of, you know, like, am I becoming dependent on this? Is this like, maybe this isn't destroying my life, but I don't feel good about it. Like, how did I not even mention this one? The phone, addicted to the phone. You know, like people say all the time, it's just like spend 3 hours on your phone straight. Have you ever felt better after it? I know, maybe if you're watching a really good movie on it, but you know what I mean. Flipping through apps mindlessly, just like the same way you check a fridge when you're hungry and there's nothing in it, just going back to that same social media app or game, bored with it, go back to it. Again, that idea of avoidance and just looking for some sort of escape or just some sort of hit of dopamine, you know, same way of chasing the dragon. You're just chasing a smaller dragon, but it could lead you to the bigger one. Ugh, what a terrible analogy to end on. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope if you're new on the path of recovery, I hope this can help. I hope if you're still suffering, if you're still drinking, you're still using, and you're just, I don't know, you're just in that place where things aren't good. I mean, I hope that this thought process, you don't feel alone in having it and all the crazy things that go into this stuff. And I really appreciate any of you guys watching. I really appreciate the comments. You know, I'll try to reply to everyone as they come. And other than that, be well.